I'd like to begin by thanking a couple of people. Number one, Roger Thorne of the Tredyffrin Easttown Historical Society for getting me interested in the history of St. Peter's maybe a dozen years ago. The second person is Susie Baum, who continually feeds me information about the history of this church. And lastly, my wife, who forced me to put this together. And so this is probably the oldest known picture of St. Peter's, photograph of St. Peter's. And in this, first of all, you can see there's no berm there. There's no really tall berm. We're going to talk about that a little bit. And here, these two gentlemen are probably vestry members and are probably very proud of the extension, the 1856 extension. And notice right here on what we call the sacristy door, there's no roof over it. And that went into the Sunday school, and up here was the vestry meeting place. And yes, this thing's gone right here. And over here is a Revolutionary War soldier, and a tabletop grave is up, and it's now down and it's broken. And that's one of the reasons why we parishioners, we mow the grass ourselves. We do all this kind of stuff because we are careful. When you just hire someone to come in here, that's what you get. And this is the door. This is the front door to the church. But notice, look at those rectangular windows. Are they rectangular? No, they have the sunburst over them. So this is, this is what they were trying to do over and over and over, is modernize the church. And that's the vandalism that is spoken about through the 19th century. We were always trying to become more modern. And unfortunately, it wasn't that great. So here we go. This a lot of what you're going to see is from the vestry meetings in 1744. Be it remembered, on this year that St. Peter's Church was built under the care of Richardson Methuselah. I love that name, Methuselah Davis. This was his farm here, 100 and more acres here, and of course, and the other vestry members as well. Well, why here? Why here? Well, this was the highest ground in the Great Valley. From down there to King of Prussia, all the way up to Exton and Downingtown. This is 350 feet above sea level. This was the highest ground. It's not now, is it? No, all you have to do is look it over there, and you see, we're Atwaters, it's a whole lot higher than us, and they look down on us. But imagine this hill where this is the highest point, and you can look down through the valley all the way to Exton. You're looking down, not up. And the same thing over here. You can see all the way down through, down to King of Prussia. So we'll talk about how all that got higher than us. But we're 350 feet above sea level. The ridge up here is about 650 feet above sea level. And on the opposite side, over where Paoli, Malvern is, that's another 650, 700 feet above sea level. Next slide, please. So we're going to go back in time. Thank you so much. We're going to go back in time a little bit before William Penn shows up. And before we were an English colony, we were New Sweden. So the Swedes settled here, and this is one of the original cabins that the Swedes built. They built this community called Fort Christiana, which is down around where Wilmington is. And this is a log cabin that still exists today. It's probably the oldest log cabin in Pennsylvania. In my lifetime, there used to be two. This was in Upper Darby. And the vandals of Upper Darby burnt one to the ground. They figured it was the kids. So it became an important part of the teaching in Upper Darby to all the children, the importance of this log cabin as a focal point of the history of Upper Darby. So that is still there. But when we talk about our church that was built in 1705, our log cabin, that's what you need to think about. But I'm going to show it to you. And so New Sweden was located, all around the Wilmington area. Christina was their settlement. There's Fort Christina. And so they were the first people to show up here. Next slide. So the Swedes are here, and they're moving out, up the Darby Creek, and they're going after beaver and all sorts of other things. And then the Dutch show up. And the Dutch, even though it's a small country, the Netherlands, it was a huge trading empire around the world, and they became very wealthy. So this guy, Henry Hudson, came over here, and he sailed up the Delaware River, and he went past where Philadelphia is, and he goes up past Philadelphia, and he goes, all right, this is interesting. And then he comes back down, and when he's coming back down to past where Philadelphia is, he sees this river coming out from underneath all these huge trees, and they said, oh, what's that? Let's go explore it. So they lower a boat, and they go up this river that we call the Schuylkill because he named it the Schuylkill. In Dutch, that means hidden river. So we're stuck with that. So we're, to try and spell it, that's another thing. So and later on, so maps are being generated, and eventually I guess William Penn sees something like this because he realizes that, hey, somewhere between the Delaware and the Schuylkill, that would be a great place to establish that colony. And of course, Henry Hudson, he's sailing for the Dutch. He's an Englishman sailing for the Dutch. You know what happened to him? Anybody know? He was exploring, and he goes into what is called the Hudson Bay, and there freezes right there. And after it thaws, he wants to keep going, and the sailors go, you can stay here. So they put him in a small boat, and they left him there. And that's what happened to Henry Hudson. Okay, poor guy. Oh my gosh, look at all the people. Oh, all right, next one, please. All right, next one. Okay, so here we are. William Penn shows up in 1682, and it was Pennsylvania is not named after William Penn, it's named after his father. So King Charles II, not this guy the third, King Charles II owed a great debt to his father, and he also wanted to get rid of all these religious dissenters like the Quakers, so he gives them this land here. And so William Penn is on his way, we'll get there, and this is a nice little picture of Philadelphia. I know it well. Right here is the State House, which we call Independence Hall right now. So this is somewhere before the American Revolution. So I like that map, so I included it. So right up here by the emergency lights is William Penn landing at Fort Christina, and there are Dutch, there are Swedes. If you can see there are Native Americans, but there's also Welsh Quakers there. And I'm going to talk in a minute about the Warner and Knickerbocker Lime Company, or the quarry here. And the Warner family, they came here before William Penn. They were Welsh Quakers, and they may have been there too. So William Penn shows up, and in 1682, he's going to build his green country town between the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River. Next slide, please. So here we go. So William Penn, he comes here, and the year before he arrives, he has made a deal with all these Welsh Quakers that he's going to give them 40,000 acres someplace in what's called Pennsylvania, but he doesn't really know where he's going to do it yet. So William Penn comes out here to what was called the Dark Valley. And so I have the bridge there at Valley Forge because he's out in this area past that bridge, and he's lost. And one of the things that they mentioned about the Dark Valley is the only way into that valley were these Native American trails that were like a labyrinth, and he gets lost. And so trying to find his way back, he climbs up this hill and trying to see something that he knows how to get back to Philadelphia, and he can't see anything. So he calls that hill Mount Misery as they're mapping this area out. And he goes down across the stream up the other side, and up there he sees, oh, there's the Delaware, oh no, there's the Schuylkill River, that'll take me back to, I know where I am now. And he calls that Mount Joy. So he's out here exploring this area, the Great Valley. We call it, there's Tredyffrin, and if we look at the Welsh, Tree means town, and Dyffryn means a wide cultivated valley. And we were anything but. This was a dark primeval forest, trees, huge. And he says, I'm going to give this to the Welsh. And so they come in here, about 50 families, and they get this 40,000 acres, and they begin to cut the trees down and really establish farms. Now, these people were self-sufficient. They were amazing. They came out here. There was no Wawa. There was no Wegmans or whatever, so they had to be able to do it on their own. So they first, built log cabins, and then eventually built stone houses and prospered out here to eventually, by 1740, they're not calling this the Dark Valley anymore. They're calling it Dyffryn Mawr, the Great Valley. So that's the first time that Great Valley appears on a map. So right here is Mount Joy. This is where he got real happy because he could see where he was. Oh, there's the river. I'm going to follow that back to Philadelphia. Next slide. All right. So let's get to Philadelphia. So even though this is a Quaker settlement, all sorts of people are welcomed here, all different religions. My ancestors show up in 1686, and because Quakers, they were being persecuted. And so the Church of England quickly gets established. This is one of my favorite pictures up here. It's not a very good up here, but this is 2nd Street, and there's the spire of Christ Church. And so the Church of England is established. And so there's a group back in England, in London, called the Venerable Society for the Propagation of the Gospel in Foreign Parts. And so what they want are the Anglicans here, the Church of England, to go out into the hinterland and preach to the people out there. Now, they was assumed that they're all Welsh Quakers. Not so. Because when Reverend Evans gets out there, a Welshman, Evan Evans, he finds out that many of them welcomed him in their presence. And so 3 different churches are going to be established out here. 3 different mission churches are going to be established. So where St. David's is right now, the first thing that they had there was, like us, they had a log chapel in about where Waterloo and Sugartown Road is. That burned down. And their church was the first that was actually finished. Their church was finished in 1715. But since they're not in Chester County, we can claim that we're the oldest ones in Chester County. So St. David's, and so we're going to take a look at St. David's Church and see how it's almost the same as ours was. All right. Now over here on this hill, this highest hill in the Great Valley, the highest hill, a log chapel is built, and people begin to worship here. And what happens is Reverend Evans, he's being paid with a stipend from the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel. And so he goes to one church one Sunday, another church the next Sunday, and then finally St. James in Perkiomen. So, it's like 20 miles from Philadelphia, and he's coming out here to do this. So what a guy. So next one, please. All right. So here we go. We were referred to as the Welsh barony. So out here, the Welsh that came out, they were hoping that they could be autonomous, that they could have their own language. Yes, they worshiped out here in Welsh, their own customs, their own laws. Not so. They finally had to bow to the government in Philadelphia and to the colony of Pennsylvania. And this is a little sketch I found of what our log chapel looked like. Now, I said that we can pretty definitively say that this is our log chapel. Number one, it was from Roger Thorne, was my source of the Historical Society. He thought that this was it, and as they were redoing this house, he wanted to take a cutting of one of those logs and send it out to be analyzed to get a date on it. My second source is that man in the back right there, Bud Coleman. Bud Coleman, what can you tell us?
I read somewhere that the original logs were sold to parishioners.
Yes, we have that right here. Right, this is right here. It's sold in 1752. It was sold to a vestry person. Go ahead.
And he gave them to his daughter as a wedding present, and they built a log cabin coming down Church Road.
And who lived there?
My great-grandfather.
His great-grandfather lived there. And now the third source, which is documented, hanging around here a lot, like I do. You can ask my wife, am I here every day? So hanging around here a lot, I meet a lot of people. I do that E thing too, evangelism or whatever. So I have an occasion over there along the wall to meet Scott. and he's long hair, ponytail, and he'll be leaning on the wall or wandering through the cemetery, and he tells me that his family lived there for generations, and they have documentation that yes, they are the logs that were our log cabin. So right across there. So take a look on your way. Go up there and knock on the door and say, "Hey, can we come in?" No, it's just all right. So next slide, please.
Okay. So that cabin is somewhere along that.
Yeah,
off
go
that
go
road?
back. Yeah, just as you go across the bridge.
Yeah.
Heading. You go out here, you turn right. When you go across the stream,
Yeah.
it's on the left.
It's on the left.
It's on the left. Yeah.
Huh.
All right, now, so we could talk a lot about Reverend Curry, and he's probably one of the most influential rectors that we ever had here. And Reverend Curry, he was a Scotsman. He came to Virginia, and then to Delaware, and then eventually up here where he was a parishioner. And he would, on the days when Rector Evans wasn't here, he and others would hold morning prayer. And so he lived, this is his house right here, where Reverend Curry lived. So this is called Sterling Headquarters, Lord Sterling Headquarters. And of course, when he first lived there, it was probably just this little part here. But as these people became more prosperous, they added on and added on. And of course, he had 5 sons and 1 daughter, and they farmed all around this house. So just before you get to the covered bridge, it's the house on the left, Sterling Headquarters. And I have been in there many times. I worked for more than 20 years for the Park Service in the summer as a ranger, and I would have to go in there one summer and pick up one of my buddies and give him a ride out to Hopewell Furnace where I was working at the time. I'm walking around this place. He had a small room, 2 cots in it, and I said, "What a dump." How much do you have to pay to Park Service for living here? But anyway, so all right. So that's his house, Reverend Curry. We're going to talk a little bit about Reverend Curry. We could talk a lot about him. But yes, here's Reverend Curry's grave, and here are his children. So here's St. David's Church. So if you get a chance to go over and, I did that and went over to St. David's, and when I first became property chairman here, and this is what our church looked like. Look at the stone. Look how beautiful that is. It's not pebble dashed like ours. Why'd they do that? And there's the windows. Notice the arched windows with the sunburst there. They're not rectangular like we changed them to. And so I mentioned Ben Franklin and Reverend Curry. And so Ben Franklin's newspaper is called the Pennsylvania Gazette. And in the 1750s, we were moving towards a conflict with the French and their allies, the Hurons. It was called the French and Indian War. And so, of course, the Quakers were pacifists, and they didn't want to raise any funds or troops or whatever for protecting the settlers out there on the frontier. But Pastor Curry gave several sermons about the morality and the rightness of us protecting these settlers out there from the French and the Huron allies in opposition to the Quaker government in Philadelphia. And so Ben Franklin took note of this and published several of Reverend Curry's sermons in the Pennsylvania Gazette. All right. Oh, and by the way, we're going to talk about the Revolution. We just did the prayers of the people, and Gail read those very well, and she read something, and we said, and what's our response to that? Yeah, Lord, hear our prayer and all. Well, we did that up in the Revolution too, in the Book of Common Prayer. And as we got closer and closer to the Revolution in 1776, they would put out that prayer to the king, and nothing would come back, or what they heard they didn't want to hear. So Reverend Curry realized, so this is Reverend Curry's letter of resignation in May of 1776. And here it is all typed up so you can read it, a little bit better. And so Reverend Curry, he started here as a parishioner, a very pious man, and eventually, before 1737, he goes to London to be ordained. And when he's ordained as an Anglican priest, he takes a vow of obedience or a loyalty to the king, and he comes back here, and he never breaks it. And so that's why he resigns. at the time of the American Revolution. He remained loyal. He remained loyal to the king, as did some of the other wealthy people here. And but 3 of his sons were with George Washington. They were doctors, and this is his son William, who died in the American Revolution when they were at Valley Forge, 1777 to 78. His son and his daughter-in-law, they died from what was called camp fever or typhoid. And that left him, Reverend Curry, with 3 grandchildren to raise besides everything else. Now they say 1776, but he continued to bury people, to baptize people up into the 1780s. And I was down there for the 200th anniversary. I volunteered for whatever they called it, the 200th anniversary of the Episcopal Church. And there was the Book of Common Prayer, and there were the prayers of the people, and there's the prayer to the king. Guess what? X'd it out, and it was it. What happened when the British came back in and took possession of the city? I don't know. So, but right here, this is kind of interesting. This is the doorway, the entrance to their church. They call this the church, their big worship spot, place, they call that their chapel. But as you go in this door, you step right there. You're stepping on the grave of Judge William Moore, who was a parishioner here. He's buried there with his wife. And of course, Moore Hall Road goes to Moore Hall, his house, which is still there. And he got real upset here. You know how some people, one thing happens here at St. Peter's and they go, I'm out of here. Well, that's what happened to him. So he got upset about a 20-shilling fee for burying somebody in the floor. He got upset. He said, I'm out of here. And so he was over there and he's buried over there, and good riddance. All right. Anyway, he was a loyalist. Next one, please.
Over there being St. David?
Yeah, this is St. David's. All right, St. David's. All right. So now, let's talk. I got to. How am I doing on time? Oh boy. Okay. So I could have never done this before, but my wife says you can't just. You got to show pictures. All right. So let's take a look at the inside of the church when it was finished in 1744. It had a dirt floor, and when people came in, they brought chairs, they brought benches, and they sat there, and then little by little, they put a floor down, and we'll talk more about that. But today, we look at this altar piece, this altar table, and over here there's information about how it was made by John Wayne. Now, when we think of John Wayne, I think of the Duke, but you got to think about Mad Anthony Wayne, the general. So Captain Anthony Wayne came here. He came here to Pennsylvania, and he came with his 3 sons, and they built Waynesboro. Now imagine, here's a man coming here, his 3 sons, and they build that mansion over there. Amazing. So the people that were the original settlers here, they were skilled. They were masons, they were carpenters, and so a lot of the carpentry work were done on the inside of the church was done by a man by the name of Edward Pierce, and also some masonry work. But they wanted to find somebody really superb. And so John Wayne, who was the uncle of Mad Anthony Wayne, General Wayne, was a member of the Carpenter Company, you know, the Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia, and only the best of the best got to be members of the Carpenter Company. And they went to him, and he built the table, the wine glass pulpit, and the reading lectern. And it was amazing. And this was not seated in the corner right here. This was, as you walked into, where we walk into the church from the gathering space, that's where the wine glass pulpit was and the reading lectern, and they were ripped out in 1830. So this is the only thing we have left. Yes, question?
I've been here for a long time. When I first came here, when our priest would do the communion, he was facing the window.
Yes.
And we didn't have the table.
Yes.
And I thought that we had had that table built while I was here.
That may be true. I don't know I'm going by what I see right here. But you'll see a picture of when you face the window. Yeah.
And I remember purchasing the table was a big deal. We
Well, that's where we need to do probably a little bit more research, but I know that this was ripped out. I didn't know, some of the, you probably, I haven't been that long, only about 20 years, but this is the thing that I'm thinking, well, is that it or not? We got to find out. That'd be a good thing to do some more research on. All right, so we can see some of the dates here. 1744, this land was part of Methuselah Davis's farm. And yeah, they request, Reverend Curry requests the Bible and also a Book of Common Prayer, which I understand are still up in our archives room. And I just told you a little bit about John Wayne. Next one, please. All right, so here we are. We're looking at how the church looked. These are photographs that we have from around 1900. But looking at some of the renovations that have been done over the years. So in 1749, a stone slate floor was put down, and 32 pews were put in. And if you were one of the wealthy landowners, you could pay $5 and your family could sit in one of those pews. If you weren't, if you were a laborer, so let me just tell you, if you were a laborer, you would sit up in the gallery, and that's the choir loft today, but it was not only where the choir loft was, but it was also on the south side of the church over the original door, and that's where laborers or indentured servants would go up there if you couldn't afford a pew. The pews were $5 and £5, and you had the privilege of having someone buried beneath it. And so William Moore, Judge Moore, his daughter, Margaret, age 8, was the first person buried in our floor. His mother was also buried there. And what ticked off Judge Moore was a 20-shilling charge to have the pew taken apart, and he got upset about that. 20 shillings? I'm out of here. All right, so the gallery, of course, the gallery is only up there where up here right now where the choir loft is. And then in 1762, we get pot-belly stoves. Here's one of them right here, coal stoves, so we get some heating there. And but take a look at the stairs. Take a look at the stairs going up. There's a little landing here, and then it goes up again. And not like that now. And here's here's the 2 pot-belly stoves. But when they talk about the vandalization, you can see that at some times in the history of our church, we have the sunburst windows right there. And at other times, it's our rectangle. So at this time, can you imagine gray walls? Gray. And these nice little wooden blinds are green. And they think they're always modern. They called it Greek revival. And but you can also see right here, this is the 1901 extension. And so we'll get to that in just a minute. But let's go to the next one, please. All right. So let's go to the American Revolution real quick. So more and more of the people out here, all right, I mean, the revolution by 1776 had already begun. The fighting at Lexington and Concord, when's that? Listen, my children, and you shall hear the midnight ride of Paul Revere. In the 18th of April in 75, that's when the fighting, people are fighting and people are dying. And so finally in 1776, we break with the Declaration of Independence. And now the British are on the way, all right? And so the big event right here, the big event is what was called by the English the Wayne Affair, or by us, it's called the Paoli Massacre. And so you can see right here on this map, the only real building that you can see on this map is St. Peter's. And so the British are in around where Howellville is, that's their center. General Howe is down there and living in one of the houses as his headquarters, a couple other of his generals. And they know that the Americans have just been defeated at Brandywine, and Washington is retreating. And Washington sends out General Anthony Wayne to harass the rear lines and keep an eye on where the British are. And he's over where present-day Malvern Prep is located. And so the British decide, we know where they are, we're going to go visit them. And so General Gray, or Colonel Gray, whatever he was at the time, gets 2,000 of his best troops, the light foot, and he said, we're going to go get them. And so the 2,000 were split, and they wanted to come in and get Wayne in a pincer movement. That didn't happen, thank goodness. And so they came through the woods over there where it's like the St. Joseph's retreat over there. They came through that woods. Now the British, as they came through here, all had the flints taken out of their weapons. So they only came in with bayonets. And they were so skilled at using those bayonets. They came in, they lined up across Warren Avenue, and then off they went, yelling and coming into Wayne's forces. 53 of his men were killed on that ground. There are 52 of them buried in that mass grave. The next day in that pond, what at the time was a swamp, they found another body there. And the next day, they came to bury their dead. They killed 53 of us that day. A few more died over the night. They killed 53 of us. Somehow, we got 3 of them. And they wanted to find some place to bury them that was consecrated ground, Church of England. And where's the only place? That's us. And so they're coming here to St. Peter's, and they mention in their dispatches that they come on the other side of that wall into the graveyard. And that wall was built by Edward Pierce, who built the gallery, and he stonework, woodwork, he could do it all. And they were buried inside along with several Americans that had died, that were prisoners that had died overnight. And so it's a great honor for us to really take care of those graves. They're buried side by side, and it's just amazing experience just to be responsible for mowing and caring for all that. And here's the British. They came a few years ago. This is Roger Thorne, who I thank for really getting me interested in the history of this place. And here they are. They're bringing soil from Great Britain. This was about maybe 10 years ago. And just recently, one of the things that they did was they did a ground penetrating radar to see what they could find. And I read the report, and it really was it was gobbledygook to me. But there it is. And I like this right here. Patrick Anderson. You'll see that on the wall inside. Patrick Anderson fought in the French and Indian War, and then also in the American Revolution. And he's buried underneath that extension. That's where his grave is. And there were some folks at the church this summer, a woman from Atwater, and she was from South Asia, India. And I was telling him a little bit about the place, and and then I mentioned Patrick Anderson and how he fought in the French and Indian War. I shouldn't have said Indian because they said, "We fought you? We fought the French?" I said, no. I had to explain the whole war. And but anyway, his father came as an indentured servant. And if you go across the Valley Creek on North Valley Road, you see that big yellow mill that's there that's now a private home. Well, his father was an indentured servant there for 7 years, fell in love with the miller's daughter, and when his indenture was over, ran off with her. And he was forgiven. His father-in-law gave him land, but this is their son. And he fought in the French and Indian War. He was a captain in the American Revolution. He's buried under there. And there are many other soldiers from other wars in our. You see them with all the flags in our cemetery. And so Patrick Anderson. Do we know anybody named Anderson? Winnie Anderson. Yes, the family's still here. Next one, please.
Any relation to the Andersons who built had a farm on Valley Park Road?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know for sure. Okay, so let's talk about vandals. All right. So here is the Church of St. David's. This is St. David's. It's all a simplicity. And this back building here is their sacristy. And we had one too. We had a sacristy here, and the priest would come out and go up into the pulpit. And so in 1830, they tear that thing down. They tear that thing down, and oh my gosh, we're afraid about the walls. They think the walls are going to collapse. So these metal rods that you see here are to stabilize the walls and prevent our church from collapsing. So that's what you see right here, and that's all part of the 1830 renovation. Yes, the inside is plastered, and here it's white for a while, but somehow they think, oh, green shutters and gray walls. That sounds like our house with the gray walls. I don't know, but Greek revival is what they called it. So it's neat to go over there. When I went over there, I walked around and I looked at the windows, I looked at the doors, I saw they were painted, the glazing, all of that kind of was a rich church, poor church, I don't know. But it's been my kind of mission over the last several years to get us to where they are. And anyway, all right, next one, please. Okay, so here we are. This is the 1901. The 1901 edition, and you'll notice that there's a fireplace here. There's a fireplace, and there's a Bilco door because it's going down to a heating system down there, and so that's 1901. You'll see that, but in 1856, that's when they add the Sunday school and also the vestry meeting there. And those two gentlemen were out there, and I think they felt, this is really cool, but architects have said, what did they do to that beautiful colonial church? And once again, here's the wall, and next slide, please. All right. So I love this picture right here. I love this picture. It's our wall, but everything on the other side, looking down to King of Prussia, is nothing but corn. And it's down. Right now, this is where Echo Lake is, Echo Lake. And when they were building Echo Lake, they came all the way up to our boundary, and they kept drilling and exploding, the rock and hauling the rock away. And eventually, they put seismographs there to just to measure things, and they took videos just so we couldn't claim anything. But after they finished Echo Lake, what happened? 40 feet of our wall fell down. Who remembers that? It cost only $18,500 to fix it. And I like this. I like this gate right here. You're going to see another picture of it. This is the way it is today. I'll show you the way it was long ago. But we call this Dante's Gate. And this was the original entrance into our church. You got off here with your horse, and it was taken to the barn, or you came in here with your carriage and got off the carriage and down here. Next one, and this was, Reverend Edgar Cope shows up at this time, 1899, and he really helps to do, number one, straighten out the finances of the church. To say anything, the finances of the church were really loosey-goosey, and so he does that. And also, up until this time, the vestry, man, they ruled. But when Edgar Cope shows up, things change. Instead of being vestry for life, like William Sullivan, who was from 1867 up to 1903 on the vestry, man, he ruled. But Edgar Cope comes in here and really establishes his presence. All right, next one. This is what I like. There's the gate. Look at the gate. There it is. And it's not even stuccoed right there. And here's the gate today. Here's somebody probably planted this little boxwood right there. Now it's 15 feet high, and we just trimmed it this summer just so you could get a better picture of the gate. All right, that was the entrance to our church. Next, please. All right, now here we go. All right, getting. So here's our church right here, and we are continually under assault by this giant conglomeration just eating the earth. Right here, these are lime kilns. These are lime kilns. These are fed with wood. They're ovens, and all of the crushed rock is put in here, and they extract the lime from it. But just like an iron furnace, where I worked for quite a while, you take what you want, the iron or the lime or whatever you're doing, and everything else is called slag, and that's trash. And you'll see there's a railroad coming up along here where our berm is, and they're bringing all this trash up here along here and just dumping it. And in 1918, there was somebody who was on the board over here of the quarry and happened to also be on our vestry. So all of a sudden a deal was made so that for $8,000, they were going to cut our road. This road was one of the major roads through here, and it went over and it connected to Yellow Springs Road and eventually to Moorhole Road, but now we're all cut off. But here we are. Here's our church. There's the 1901 extension. You know what this is? That's the privy. That's where you went to the bathroom. And this is where your horses were, right there. So this is about I know this is 1920 because Bud Coleman's here. Next one, please. We'll see it from the, all right, here we are from the north. And so here's our church right here. And here's a little community over there that if you go over there, these are all ruins now. But look how open the land is, and look how we are continually under assault, explosion after explosion after explosion. All right, now the next one is a good one. It's the best one. Okay, so here we are. This is right here. This is the best one. And Bud, your original is over in the shed. So thanks to Bud Coleman, when he was a young boy, he got a ride in the back of a biplane in 1926, and he took a little camera with him, and he took pictures of our church. You look pretty good for that age, Bud. just kidding about that. These are from the Historical Society, but Bud had them. So thank you for that. And once again, there's our privy pit right there. I understand it was multi-seated, and there's our horses right there, and there's the wall. And as you go, there's the entrance right there. All right, great pictures. All right, next one. But we're continually under assault. Next one. Okay. Now here's when everything changes. So this is Reverend Gunther when he arrives. Here's his grave, right out there in the corner. Reverend Gunther and another one of our rectors is out there as well. Reverend Gunther is there with his family, and he's the one who arrives in 1943. He looks at this conglomeration that we have, and he's the one that brings it all back to its colonial simplicity. And so next one, please. So he and the Orr family, they're the ones that are really responsible for bringing us back to a colonial presence, a church. And we had all sorts of people up here. One of the things, this is, you can see right here, it's Blessing of the Hounds, right there, Blessing of the Hounds. But they also had St. Peter's Annual Day for several decades just to celebrate the history of St. Peter's. Next one, please. All right, so here's the church. So here we are with the 1901 extension, but this is the 1952 extension. They take down the fireplace and they add something else. They add this on. So now what we have is we have water and electricity for the first time in 1952. One source said we got electricity during World War II, but now right where the kitchen is, that was the bathroom. That was the bathroom until we have the 1989 extension. Next one, please. All right, so here's Reverend Gunther, and here's the plaque inside, 1944, and it was in honor of one of their children that died that they put this money forward to restore our church to its colonial, to what it looked like in colonial times. And so here's what it looks like today. Yeah, I don't see that table there, but here's what it looked like in 1944, and here's the choir loft. If you can see right there, the Bigelow organ isn't up there. And in 2011, when we lost the air conditioning system, people said, "Well, hey, we didn't have air conditioning long ago. Why do we need it now?" Well, it's because of that organ that we need to have everything controlled. And here are people. It's now that we're coming in through the road over here. Where you saw that in the previous picture, where people are parking and everything. Over here, we acquired this land over here somehow, but we're still going in over here. But we have the sacristy. We have the sacristy entrance right here, and but it's a great being out there in the graveyard. You get to know these people from from a lot, from long ago. You get to know who these people are. Next one, please. All right, so here we are today, and so here's the 1989 edition right here, and somebody was telling me they were having trouble with that door. Look at that door. It's white over there, white, red over here. So forgive me, I'm going to digress. This rotted away in 30 years. And we propose putting in a bout door like we have right here, aluminum, that'll last a century. We were overruled by the vestry, and they had somebody come in, and it still doesn't work. The guy got all upset and left and never gave us the key to the front door. But anyway, so there we are with the 1980. Somebody said it was historic. When is 1989 historic? All right, I guess I'm historic then if that's true. And so right here in 1994, the Magnolia Garden goes in, and yes, we're in the process right now of the windows and the doors in the Magnolia Garden, restoring those. They have not been touched or painted since 1989. We are rectifying that as we speak right here. So that's the church right here. Well, wait, that's not the church. Next one. We are the church. We are the church. That's just a building. I've been talking about this building and the changes. So it's been generation of those of us worshiping here at St. Peter's. We are the church. That building is just there. And it's been given to us. We're going to take care of it. We'll take care of this building and everything else in these 16 acres. And it's a great privilege to be involved in that. Thank you very much. Is there any coffee left? No.